Welcome everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar today on advanced search field values. My name is Antonio. I'm the partner network manager here at IDX Broker, and today I'm going to be talking about the latest method for our API that's been released. This gives you the advanced search field values. These are the values you would find in advanced search fields like subdivision, for example. So these fields are going to be given according to MLS guidelines. Everything we do is going to be MLS compliant, so we can't give you any values that the MLS doesn't allow us to give. There's some requirements like all API calls. Most of these are mostly the same, but with this particular method there are some things we need to specify. We have to specify the MLS by IDX ID. For example, in today's example we'll be using our MLS, which is A001 in our system. You must specify the field name. These are the actual names, the advanced search values. They show up on the advanced search forms. They're below the basic and core fields. In today's example, we're going to be using subdivision since it's a pretty common one. You must specify the property type. Again, that's going to differ from MLS to MLS, and I'm going to show you a couple of the other methods that you can use in conjunction with the advanced search field values to get this kind of information. The property type we're going to be using today is going to be property type 1, which is normally single-family residential across most MLSs, but again, you're going to want to double-check that with the particular MLS you're calling values for. As always, your content type must be in the request headers. You must make your API calls using HTTPS. So we can use some of the other methods that are currently available to get some of this information that I had just mentioned, the MLS IDX ID and the name of the advanced search value that we need the options for. This is a client-level API call, which I spelled wrong, and you can get the information for that client via these couple API calls here. So in gathering the MLS ID, we call the approved MLS method, and we'll get the output as shown here in this JSON. Like I said, regional multiple listing service is going to be the example I'm going to use for the rest of this webinar. Its IDX value is A001. Every MLS that IDX Broker services has a value like this. These values can change as the MLS migrates, let's say, to a new vendor or something of that nature, or as MLSs combine or split. So it is good to do these things via API because you can schedule an update on these MLSs that are approved for your client. So you'll always get the correct name, or I'm sorry, IDX numeric value, alphanumeric value. Here's an example of one that has changed. Beach's MLS you can see as B006. So this convention goes on with changes as needed by the MLS. Now, when we call for the search fields, we again get a very long list of, or get a return of a very long list of different values. You'll recognize a lot of these: acres, for example, subdivision, for example, zip code stuff. One of these values, from this return, each one of these values is capable of returning the search value and options associated with it via another API call. This is pretty useful instead of going to the advanced search page and adding a field, then making it listable, then searching through the list. It's a lot easier just to make a call to find out what search value options are available to your client, and these can be, of course, current because they're updated as the API updates. And we'll look at an example here in a second about how to create something useful like that out of this. The call for the advanced search field values is pretty much the same as all the other IDX Broker calls. This is a GET call. There's no post, there's no put or delete, because these values are given to us by the MLS. In the URL string, this is where you're going to specify the criteria I mentioned before, the MLS IDX ID, the property type, and subdivision. We can see them here in our URL variable. First, the MLS, the property type ID, which you can see here is PTID, And again, our example for today is going to be the values for subdivision. It's a get call. All the normal required headers are there. This is a client level call, so your ancillary key isn't necessary. You can use your ancillary key as a developer partner, of course, to raise the limit of API calls per hour, but it's not necessary. And this method and its values really isn't something you need to be calling every single hour or really that often. These values probably aren't going to update very often. They might update as active properties come in and out of the MLS or particular subdivision, but anything more than daily is going to be probably overkill on this. All the rest is the same as every other API call in our method just about, so this is a pretty standard get call. So let's look at using some of these values once we've called them and stored them. Here I have a form I've created for myself. I get the question of what values are available, what search values are available, and the options inside of them what are those available to my client. I get that question quite a bit. So I've created a tool for myself in order to answer this quickly. This form will grab a test key, which is a client level key. I'll enter an MLS ID, and this form will do the get call for the search values for a particular MLS. This won't give me the option values yet, but it will return all the search values that I'm looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and enter a key, and we're going to go through our MLS here. And this is a sample call for the advanced fields available. So you can see here I have all this advanced fields. I've made the API call for search fields A001 and the property type value is 1 here. That's a filter there at the end. So now I have all of the advanced fields for our MLS, which is great. I can tell anyone, oh, you have farm distance bus, whatever the MLS allows us to show. Let's go ahead and go down to the one we're going to be working with today, which is subdivision. Now, I've laid these all out with a for each statement. So for each value, I actually create a URL. This URL will lead to a secondary PHP file I have prepared. I'll pass my key and my MLS via URL string, question mark and ampersand delineated, of course. And the secondary PHP file will then do the advanced search options call. In this way, I can do one call with one key, and I can go straight to the advanced search values by just clicking on a link. And it automatically returns all the search option values for subdivisions. So now with a simple Control F, I can find if a client wants to know if a particular subdivision is available within my MLS. I can just do Control F and search for it within the return value. And I don't have to go through the IDX Broker middleware, create a search page, put in the subdivisions field if it wasn't there already, and then start looking through the subdivision field after it's been made listable. This gives me a lot quicker answers and only really costs 2 API calls. Of course, every time you search through a subdivision or a advanced search field, that'll cost 1 more for the option values. So this is a pretty useful tool and a very, very good example of how to use this method in a very real-world way. But this is all developer stuff. Here, this would not be something a client would use. So let's take a look at another example of this particular method used in a way that a client would want. We can create a search form for a particular subdivision, is what I've done here. This is just a simple form. I won't go into the HTML of it because it's just like every other HTML form. I've set a couple things as variables here in the action URL, the MLS ID, and the property type here. The reason for this is I like to recycle my code, and as long as I have these search option values cached somewhere, I can recycle this code and have a subdivision kind of widget here for multiple clients across different MLSs. This form also presupposes that you've already made the call for your search option values, and stored them somewhere. In this case, I stored them simply in a text file. Now, this works for pulling subdivisions, but as you can see, this is a very, very long list. One of the things with subdivisions or some of these fields is they will be very, very long or very, very short. It depends on the field option values that are given to us by the MLS. You're going to want to tailor that if you're going to be using it for any front-end stuff. So with a little added jQuery, now I've changed it to show the MLS and the property type value. And the little jQuery can give us a little autofill. These values are populated by this PHP form as they're pulled from a text file of the JSON array returned from the API. My acquisition script that populates that JSON array can be sent on a cron job, and in this way this form will always stay up to date as long as it pulls from that JSON array. And the cron job runs, let's say, once a week. Any changes will automatically populate here through to my form, and my jQuery will provide an autofill for what is a very long form. Of course, you can edit the form, parse it however you like, only show specific values, whatever you want to do with the stored array that this form is pulling from. You can also hide any values. I do like setting these as variables and then hiding them. That way when I recycle my code, I can shoot a different MLS in here. Now, that form was fine, but I do like things to look a little bit better. So here we have pretty much the exact same form with a little bit of CSS, and I've hidden some of the values. This is already starting to look more like a widget. These kinds of widgets for advanced search option values are not currently available from IDX, so this is one way that you could make your own. This widget could be populated on the PHP page. A little bit of Ajax would then be able to create a JavaScript embed that you could place this on one site, multiple sites. It's up to you at that point. Of course, I still have my jQuery autofill in place because this is a very long list. But this does show how, with just a couple API calls and caching the returning JSON, you can create widgets, you can create custom search forms, you can create tools for yourself for lookup purposes, all with only expending a couple of your carefully budgeted API calls per hour. Let's just show this form working. Let's go to one of these subdivision values and see if we have any results in, we'll just pick one at random. Sure. And you see it leads right to a IDX Broker results page as expected. This one happens to have lead capture turned on, but we can see the results here at the bottom, and the form is functioning correctly and now can be, like I said, widgetized, placed into even a WordPress theme if you'd like, and recycled over and over again across your clients, across multiple MLSs, provided that you set this all up as variables. Yeah, so it's a very great function, or a great method that's come out. It allows for a lot more information, and it's one of the methods that needs to be there in place for the information you need for what I'm hoping will be even further control via the application programmer interface. This video will be on YouTube, on our developers channel, which is youtube.com/IDX Broker Developers. That's developers plural, along with other API method videos that I'll be creating and have created, and playlists and all that kind of fun stuff, specifically geared towards developers. Feel free to go to the channel, subscribe, like, comment, and enjoy. Thank you for attending today's webinar, and I'll be creating more and talking to you all soon again shortly. Thank you.